Mr. Frank. Who's that? How you doing today? Oh, hey, how are you? Yeah, we can be Frank. Talk. Okay, well, before we get in there, how was your Father's Day, Frank?
A Father's Day. Yeah, just like every other holiday, every other Father's Day. Nothing special.
No.
You know, I didn't see my kids, didn't hear from them. I didn't call them.
Wow.
You know, that's just the way it is, man. My dad was that way.
So, boy, what you want with the sneakers? You think I'm gonna pay $300 for some Prada sneakers? I ain't doing it. But you's a dumb mug. I don't, you know what? You merely want me to say, I really want to say something else. I'm not even gonna say what I really want to say about you, because that's just chump stuff right there. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your mom? What? You want, no, I ain't getting you no motorcycle. What's wrong with you, boy? You stupid? You want to be like your boy Tyreek, who only got one leg now? Man, you so dumb. You know what? I think that, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put my foot so far up your behind next time you turn around with this dumb nonsense talk. You gonna be able to taste my toenails. I'm telling you. Boy, what's wrong with you? You up in my crib with this little skank? Oh my gosh. You know what? You and your little skank better get out of here right now, because I'm about to flat blast both of you. Little skank, little no good. Boy, on the football field today, you was playing like a little punk. You weak, you soft. You just make me sick. I don't even know how to, I gotta go get a test. I need to get a DNA test, because you ain't even my son. You not even my son. You weak, man. Get out of here. Get out my face, man. Boy, you bringing home this report card with D's and C's? B's and C's? Nah, boy, that's not how we roll up in here. I'm trying to get you into a good school. I need excellence, okay? Excellence. B's and C's ain't gonna get it, okay? Now, we went through this before. What do you have to do? You have to do what I asked you to been doing, son, and you ain't doing it. What are you? You know, you just can't make it out here? You can't make it like this with, are you hanging around the wrong kids? Because at the end of the day, if you can't get A's in this crib, you can't live in this crib, period. You might as well go get yourself a job, but you're gonna be out in the street. You better be able to bring in those A's and those A's. I don't want no B's and C's. Ain't no room for no, I don't want mediocrity in our family. We're not having that. You have to be top notch. If you ain't coming top notch correct, you're gonna have to bounce.
So, you know, that's how I am. And that's how it's gonna be.
And how do you feel about that, Frank? I mean, really, we're being frank. What's your overall feeling? Because right now, I get the perception that you're angry because of that.
Yeah, I'm angry.
Do you like being angry because of that?
Well, you know, anger for me is a place I know. It's a place of strength, right? Because you gotta survive out here. You gotta have a certain face. And my father, like I said, he wasn't there for me, and I don't even take government checks, man. I don't want nothing from the founding fathers. I don't want nothing. Nobody father. You know, and these kids, you gotta be straight with them, tell them, you know, when they doing wrong, just tell them they're being stupid. You know, they ain't gonna amount to nothing, because if you talk to them like that, maybe it'll stir them up to do the right thing.
I understand what you're saying, especially with raising men. You gotta be a little firm with them sometimes. But this.
Good morning, brothers, and welcome to the Men's Breakfast Morning Show. Today we're going to be talking about actions of a godly father, and my host will be our very own Art Mitchell. But before we get into that, let's check out this quick devotional. We'll be right back.
What's up, mighty men? It's your brother, Lark here. And as always, I like to share a devotional. And this one is called Romantic, Reclaiming Manhood. And this was written by David and Ella. In this 6-day devotional, this is what was presented to me on day 6. It starts like this. You are the solution to a problem in the world. When God fashioned you in your mother's womb and numbered the hairs on your head, the intentionality he put into your design was on purpose. God saw a problem in the world and a need among his people. And he said, let us make our Lark. Stop for a second and just throw your name. My brother, you are responsible, not just for an assignment, but to a people. There is a need that you have been especially equipped to meet and a void that you are needed to fill. God calls you to a partnership with him in his redemptive effort to bring heaven on earth. You can't do it without him, and he won't do it without you. The task is on you to identify what this responsibility or purpose is. To stir up the gifts of the Holy Ghost that have been placed in you for your assignment. And to make yourself a useful vessel through which God makes his glory known to the world. This is no small task. God has made you responsible for the souls of people. God has called you to much greater than what you see or experience now. Answer the call and truly submit your heart to him. Watch him accomplish through you things that are beyond your wildest dreams.
Good morning, brothers in the Lord. I count it as a privilege to be able to come before you this morning and share a few brief words with you concerning the topic of actions of a godly father. And so I want to turn briefly to Ephesians chapter 6. And in verse 4 it reads, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up in the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." And one of the things I've noticed as Christian fathers, we can fall into the habit of strictly relying on our 5 senses and living in a 3D world. And when we do this, we're ignoring the most important aspect of our lives. That's the spiritual aspect. That makes our lives 4 dimensions, because it's not just a 3-dimensional world that we're dealing with. It's the 4th dimension as well, and that's the most important. And why is that so important? Is because God is looking for fathers to be the first disciplers our children ever have. It shouldn't be that the first time they're discipled is once they get into the house of God, the church. As fathers, God is relying on us. He wants us to bring them up in the discipline of the Lord. Matter of fact, in Malachi, it talks about God has brought men and women together to raise a godly seed. But primarily, God has placed that on the man, that we would be the primary discipler, that we would be the ones that are instilling in our children the spiritual life that they need to have to survive in this world. In Proverbs 3 and verses 5 and 6, it reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you the path to take." We can get so caught up on trying to be perfect fathers that we miss the fact that God has to be the intimate person in our lives, directing how we disciple our children. If we are to have actions of a godly father, the godly father is relying on the Lord. We're trusting in the God to give us what we stand in need of in order to be a blessing to our children. And when we put God first and realize that we are 4th dimensional beings, not only are we blessed, we're blessing our children and the families that will come from our children. So always remember, put God first, rely on prayer, and know that God is always in your corner to make sure that you succeed. I praise God for this opportunity, and I pray that you have a blessed week, a blessed life, and I'm looking for God to do great things in your life.
Welcome back, brothers. Welcome back. And I want to just real quick, let's get him up on the stage, my brother and yours, Art Mitchell. What's up, brother?
Come on there, Ira.
Thank you for joining, mighty man.
Excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So, we here today, we talking about the actions of a godly father.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're going to dive right into this, because as always, I'm learning something from every single show. So, what I want to do is, let's talk about intentionally being a godly father. Let's delve into that. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. First of all, like I said, I'm just humbled being here.
Oh,
because,
that's awesome.
there are a lot of brothers you could choose from. I didn't get here by mistake. I didn't get here on my own accord. I've watched the examples of other men. I've watched the examples of other men that in my family, in this church, brothers that I've been able to surround myself with. And when I think about intentionality, I look at how these brothers have raised their families.
Amen. Yes,
the sacrifices that are made, the choices that are made, the fact that, I'm sure we'll get into a little bit about, the notion of being what a godly father, a godly man is.
Yeah.
But that intentionality means that you are submitted to God.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. That intentionality is that you have some thoughts and plans that you're putting in action that God has put in your heart, and you're determined to follow through with them.
Yeah.
So intentionality is the planning and preparation, the prayer, the submission to God and His Word for what He's called you to be as a father. You have an understanding that God has put you in a position to be a father, and that He has, essentially He has some expectations of what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And you're determined to follow what those expectations are.
Yeah.
It's real easy just to kind of sit back and let fatherhood happen.
Right.
Let the kids kind of raise themselves.
Right.
Take a hands-off approach. And people take a hands-off approach in different ways. So I know a lot of people who are very intentional fathers when it comes to their sons being on the field or on the court.
Right.
They're really intentional
Right,
there.
right.
They are like, they're on their grind. They're like, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. They're living vicariously through their kids. But then if you ask them about their academic lives or their spiritual lives, not so much.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So that intentional fatherhood is not, just on one area. It is we are raising these young people to be who God has called them to be, and then we're moving out of the way to let God do His thing. But we've done our part in doing what God has told us to do.
Yeah, and I like that how you put that together, because when we talk about intentionally being a godly father, I think some of us might think that means I don't curse at my kids.
Right.
I like that you said it's about putting God first, intentionally having a relationship with the Lord.
Yep.
Because we have that intensity, like you said, on the field, but that's probably as far as it goes for some of us, right?
For some.
And I guess not to jump on anybody, but this is something that we as men, we should stop for a second and look at that.
Yes.
So I'm totally feeling that. I'm totally feeling that. Now, me and you, we had a phone conversation before we got here, and we were talking about love, respect, and loyalty, right? That's something that you instilled in your boys. And I want you to share that real quick, right? Because everybody didn't get to be a part of that. I got to have that. So I want you to share with them what you mean when you say love, respect, and loyalty.
Oh, flip around. It's LLR.
Excuse me.
Loyalty and respect.
Love, loyalty, and respect. Excuse me.
So I think this is part of the intentionality. So as you said, my boys, my wife and I, we have 6 sons. I joke around saying, family 1.0 and 2.0, because the first 5 are clustered together, 26 down to 18 years old, and then we have a 10-year-old, right?
Right.
So we're learning life again with that 10-year-old. It's an interesting journey, but it's a great journey. And as we continue to, as the kids were getting older, and that intentionality piece about what is it that we are instilling in them that becomes something that they can anchor themselves to, something that becomes a family mantra, it becomes something that we can call them to and say, hey, here's what you should be doing. And that's where the love, loyalty, and respect came from.
Okay.
That's you walk into my house, and my wife just made this nice plaque that's on the wall. When you walk in, you see love, loyalty, and respect.
Okay.
And it was at all times, that's what a Mitchell boy, Mitchell man should show. And that love is, that biblical love. You're going to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
So you have this that love orientation to how you're working with other people. Loyalty. I think the loyalty piece probably came when my oldest son and his younger brother. I think there was probably a moment where I observed my oldest son kind of kick his brother through the curb for his friends. And we're like, nah, we're not going to do that.
Right.
So we have to have an understanding that this is your brother and you're going to be loyal to your brother and loyal to your brothers in Christ. So we're not going to neglect those who are in the family.
Right.
Not neglect those who are in the body. And so that notion of loyalty was really you were going to, this primacy of your family, your brothers, you're going to take care, watch over your brother. We're not going to be Cain and Abel. It's not going to be, am I my brother's keeper? It's like, yeah, you are. Yeah. Right? That is going to be your orientation.
Yeah.
And the respect piece is that at all times we should be showing respect. If you expect to be respected, you have to demonstrate respect. So once again, that is how do I see others and treat others? Am I thinking about someone as being less than? I can't do that. So I have to have this humility about me that God has placed me in a position where I'm not a respecter of persons, but I'm going to show respect to everyone just based on the fact that they are God's creation. And that God has put them here for a purpose, and that my job is, if they don't know Jesus, is to orient them to who God is by my actions.
That's right.
And if they do know the Lord, then we're going to build each other up, right?
Yeah.
And so that notion of love, loyalty, and respect really comes out of that. And so that's kind of our family mantra. And that became just a quick thing. What are you supposed to show? Love, loyalty, and respect. Like, yeah, that's right. So when you're in violation.
Yeah, right.
Because I've given you a standard, something to aim toward. So I don't need to say a whole lot in order to trigger that there's something you should be doing or some way you should be thinking that we've already talked about.
Yeah, catching them and holding them accountable right then and there.
Catching and holding them accountable. And like I said, it's just something that just becomes a way of thinking, because it becomes a way of life that's grounded in the Word.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just thought that it made sense to share that, right? So everyone else could hear that.
Yeah.
Because I take pride in knowing that my children are respectful when people see them. Oh yeah, those are our kids. I love that, and I don't have everything you just said though. Like I got to make sure that that's there. I tell my son and my two daughters, I got one boy and two girls, always be there for each other.
Right.
And that's pretty much where I'm kind of summing it up. But you took it deeper, and I think that that's really important. And I appreciated that you shared that with me. And now, you guys just got that as well.
There you go.
I just interrupted. I know you was about to say something.
No. I was just thinking that we've had some object lessons in life where there have been tangible rewards that have come out of their behavior, and I can point to them and say, look.
Yeah.
This came from that.
Yeah.
And just a really quick one, because I'm at that age where I have a story for everything, but I'm not going to kill you guys with stories. But we had 5 at this point. We were down in Williamsburg, Virginia, on vacation, and we go into this restaurant. So we got 5 hungry boys at night, right? We go into this restaurant. We think we're going to go into just a little more casual place. We walk in, it's late, only place that's open, and there's like stemware on the table and plates and stuff. We're like, ooh, we're not gonna stay here. And they're like, no, come on in.
Yeah.
So we sit down and we sit and have a nice meal. The kids are sitting there talking, and the place isn't crowded. Dessert time comes, I asked for the check. And the lady says, just hold up. And they start bringing out dessert plates.
Okay.
And I'm like, I didn't, order any dessert. She's like, just be patient.
Yeah.
And they bring out this big death by chocolate plate and set it down. I'm like, I didn't order anything. She said, okay. She said, that couple that was sitting over in the table behind you, those are the owners. Okay. And they were watching the way your boys were behaving, and they just wanted to give this to you because they were so impressed by how your children behaved.
Wow.
And so we ate chocolate for like 3 days after that from that dessert tray. But it was like, boys, you see that people are watching, people are observing.
Absolutely.
Right? So how you behaved had a direct impact on them, and that was a kingdom moment. That was a black culture moment. That they were like, whoa,
how about that? Yeah.
Look at that.
How about that?
Look at that family right there.
Good point.
It was counter narrative, this countercultural narrative of what people normally see and think. And so I was like, so we have lots of lessons that come out of this.
Yes.
And it was just a great moment that we could share.
That's a pretty good story. That's a pretty good story. And it goes to show, because we say a lot, we're supposed to be evangelizing, and we're supposed to say this and do that, and we forget that people are watching.
Yeah.
Right? And you never know just by your actions and how you're behaving, how you could just, somebody can see that as a blessing, like, wow, it just happens, right? And it's good to tell the kids that. Now, in the beginning of the show, we ran a skit. And, we're showing, what, for lack of a better word, an ungodly father, how that can impact his child, right?
Right.
And let's step into the Bible real quick, because again, this show is not to jump on any of the fathers out there. That ain't what it's about. But the Bible shows that there were a lot of jacked up fathers that were out there, right?
Yeah.
And I know that we got a couple of examples, right? So let's share that, because again, I'm sure there's good that comes out of these stories of these people. So it's never too late.
No.
To get right, or get some act right. As we say.
Get some act right.
Some
open
act
up
right.
You can't act right before you have to open up the other can. Some of y'all get that later on. Yeah. So, there's a kind of a rule of thumb around following people versus following principles, right? It's really easy to follow people and to make them heroes and larger than life. And, say, well, I want to pattern my life after this person. But there's also some inherent dangers in that, because we're sinners. We're flawed. And ultimately people are going to let you down because of our flaws. And so you can say, I'm going to follow this person, and then you see that, wow, there was this big thing that they did, and now your foundation is shook, right? But even within that, within that person who was flawed, there was some reason that you were following them, and it was the principles that they were living by. It was some principles that they were showing you. And sometimes we have to separate the people from the principles. And it's like, taking the meat and spitting out the bone, right? So you want to take the good and kind of kick out the bad.
Absolutely.
And so I always think it's interesting when we go to the Bible, and so we have the heroes of the faith who are flawed men. God didn't give us a whole bunch of dudes who were like, this is a perfect man, I want you to follow his life, verbatim. I mean, it was like, I'm going to give you Jesus and then everyone else, right? And that's and I didn't give Jesus any kids, right? So Jesus is depending on me, the Father. That's the relationship you're looking at. But then we have these giants in the faith who, when we look at them as fathers, we're like, whoa, how did that slip through, right? How did that happen? Youth retreat, awesome teaching at the youth retreat, and that you guys were exposed to here. And you talked about Gideon, right? And so he pulled Gideon apart in ways that I was like, well, I never even looked at Gideon's life this way. Later, we look at the hero Gideon, right? But later on in Gideon's life, after he became the ruler and king, all these other things, he started slipping. And one of the things that we look at in the Bible is that these kings. They have all these wives and children. There's no way you're paying attention to all the wives, let alone all the children. And so that's why we see so many of their children falling away, killing one another, doing horrible things, because fatherhood, that intentionality, you can't be intentional with 70 kids. It's really hard, right? It's hard to be intentional with 6, sometimes with 1, let alone 70. But then, one of the things that Pastor Kelly showed was that in Gideon's life, where he said that early on he wanted, that God was Lord, God was King, but then he named his son Abimelech, which meant my father is king. So he took that and was like, all right, well, I've arrived now, and I can give my child this name. And then what happens with Abimelech? He kills all of his other siblings, right? So we can slip that way really, really easily and start feeling like we've arrived somewhere. Take a look at David. David, mighty warrior. We understand David and Solomon's relationship. David passed on to Solomon a kingdom, some great lessons. David was the warrior, Solomon was the peacemaker. Solomon was the diplomat. Solomon was intended to do things David couldn't do. He gave David gave Solomon some great instruction and warning at the end of his life. He set him up for success, right? But David had a bunch of other kids.
And didn't he skip over? He skipped over.
Right? To Solomon, right? So, and his other children were trying to kill him. So, so think about that, right? So you're in this situation where we're looking at these, what happened, his son have murdered one another, raped daughters.
His daughter, yes, his sister.
These are things that are happening under his watch, in his household. And what does he do? Kind of shrugs his shoulders like, well, that's my son, and making excuses for the kids. You take a look at the favoritism that existed in the Bible. So, you're looking at Joseph, right? So Joseph the younger, the coat of many colors, that's Dad's favorite now.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do to Dad's favorite? Well, we're going to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Because we were doing just fine until this cat came along. And look how Dad treats him versus the way Dad treats us.
How about that?
Let's get rid of that guy. So, I mean, we take the good and the bad, but we look at those examples, we're like, all right, so what do we learn from those examples of where fatherhood, where these godly men who we know are placed in our lives in the Word for a reason, where they slipped and why, and what was that human frailty that we can easily fall into? Do I see myself showing favoritism to my children? Do I see myself saying, well, this one is more like me, this one is less like me, and I spend more time, put more energy into this one, and not so much here. There's something about this kid that we just don't jive, don't get along the same way, and therefore I'm gonna let his mother raise him. So then it becomes Jacob and Esau. I like the rough one. The one's a little more sensitive. That's mama's boy.
Guy with the soft hands go.
Right. The one with the soft hands. Yeah, you go hang out with mom. And then that's the one. What happens? Well, I'm going to undermine this one, and I'm going to so I'm going to drive a wedge there. And Satan uses those wedges, with the kids in the family, in order to disrupt things, in order to disrupt God's order, essentially.
I say that was the thing he did wrong. Out loud saying that's my favorite. And a lot of we say you shouldn't have a favorite, and a lot of us say I have a favorite, but if you do,
don't say it out loud.
Hold on to that. You don't just go ahead and say, I know that was back then. Prayerfully, it wouldn't happen today.
But we know that it does. Well, we know that it does, and it's really just allowing the Holy Spirit to minister to you and say, is that a fault that I have? Is that something that I'm demonstrating? If someone else was to ask my kids, not me, because they wouldn't tell me necessarily. But if we went to family counseling, would that come out in family counseling? Dad likes him better, and he does this and that and the other thing, right or wrong. But is that their perception? And is there something I can do as a father in order to, mitigate that and overcome what that issue is?
That's interesting you said that, because I just overcame that issue. I have an older daughter. And I have a son and a daughter who lives with me. My older daughter doesn't live with me. So when she comes to visit, I found out later through my son that he had a little problem with that in his early ages, because it's like, why is she getting so much attention? And I never even bothered to stop to think about that, to say, well, she doesn't live with us, and when she comes over, I like to show I got you all the time. We always doing things together, but he didn't see that, right? So it's important to communicate.
Communication is huge, and for men, we're really poor at that. It's great sitting here doing this. It's great talking to an audience of brothers and audience of folks online, and it's great for us to have a dialogue. But it needs to be a continuous dialogue. And it needs to be a dialogue with men who once again we're looking at their lives and being able to go to them and ask them, what did you do? Why did you do it? How did you do it? So that we can learn from that. And that we have peer relationships, that we're keeping one another accountable. And that as younger men are coming along, that we are making ourselves open and available and accessible to them so that they can learn as well. And that we can keep this moving by building kingdom families. And this is really about building kingdom families. So we can have a church filled with families that are not necessarily families who are walking together or working together. So how do we as men, really start to build bridges with one another, build relations with one another, so it's not just we're watching what someone's doing, we're actually interacting in one another's lives and building one another up as men and as fathers.
Hey man, I like that. I think you just gave me another show. We're gonna have, I'm gonna sit and talk to my people. We're gonna talk about that. Hey, listen, we having a good conversation. We're gonna come right back with a little bit more. Let's take this quick break. We'll be right back.
This is my son right here.
That's your son.
I'm very firm with him.
Okay, I thought I was a professor.
I was just choking him on the back of his neck since we walked from there trying to get him straight. But at the same time, Frank, you can't deny love. If love is absent, Frank, only thing you're going to be left with is that anger. You can be firm, but it can be in a caring way. You can be straight and forward, but it can be with compassion. Now, let me share a scripture with you, Frank. You know, when I go to church with here, and I'm not trying to... Let me share this one scripture. It says, this is John 15:16.
Okay.
And this is Jesus talking about the Father's love for him. God is his Father. He said, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. So, Frank, the way you love your son is the way your son is going to love his son. Now, if you receive, let me ask you this, Frank, if you receive that good, genuine, nurturing, firm love from your father, what do you think you will put out?
Well, I would be throwing out these government checks, and I guess I would be loving my kids. My kids a little better.
It's never too late to change that, Frank. I understand sometimes we get caught up in a cycle, but for your sake, for your son's sake, and for the sake of every little kid to walk past here every day, Frank, listen, just change that whole attitude. It's easy to turn it around in love. I guarantee you, Frank.
So what you're saying to me, if my father had been different to me, I might have been different to my kids, and maybe I would have heard from him.
Exactly.
On Father's Day.
Exactly.
Oh man. Oh man.
See, sometimes our firmness can turn kids around, but the Bible talks about how the love of God draws us near to him. As much as we think about, things to do, things in certain ways from our understanding, nothing is greater than love. Love can cover a multitude of sins the Bible talks about. Love can heal a lot of wounds. And it's a matter of your heart, Frank. Listen, we all make mistakes, even as fathers. I know, Frank, that you're a good father, and your intentions for your kids is very good. But then there's a way that we do it from our standpoint, but then there's a godly father. The way you can learn how to be a godly father is to first, Frank, accept God as your father. And that love he will begin to show you. You'll begin to pour out that love, I guarantee you, to your kids yourself.
You mean even at my age?
At your age, Frank. I wasn't born this way, but listen.
A grumpy old fool like me?
Well, listen, Frank. Young fool, old fool, it don't matter. Time is not a factor in life. Today is the day you can change that. It's never too late. Young pastor, he says, Pastor Bell, he always say, it's never too late to do the right thing.
Man, I just listening to you and the scriptures, I feel so, my heart feels so heavy for how I used to talk to my kids. Maybe they'd come around once in a while if I treated them differently. I see the result of your boy look like he come along fine.
He's not perfect. He's far from perfect. But listen, love is going to endure through all things. Through all things. And when you think about love, it makes you feel good, Frank.
I'm not crying, it's my sinuses.
It's okay, Frank. Listen, Frank, don't hold it back. Listen, I tell you, Frank, I'll give you a suggestion for the day. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Call your kids up. Ask God to show you what you did wrong.
Will you pray with me now? I need some courage.
No problem. Come on, boy, we're going to pray. Yeah, come on down, let's pray, Frank. All right?
Yeah.
All right.
Back. So we just had in that first segment, we had a good conversation. Right now, let's let's now delve into some key roles, characteristics of being a godly man, right? Because you have to be that godly man, and you know, because we're men before we're fathers, right? So let's just talk about that real fast. Some of those key components that, you know, roles. I mean, you and I were talking, and one of the things that you mentioned was being a priest of the family. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So there's a book, and I'm sorry, I think it might have been Pastor Bethel who gave it to me a couple of years ago. Asked me what did I think about this, and it's by this you know, international minister, Vadi Bakum. Don't agree with him on everything he says, but this book was solid. It was called "What He Must Be If He Wants to Marry My Daughter."
Oh,
right?
okay.
So I didn't have any daughters, but it had a lot of great principles for my sons, and you know, thinking about how we are training them and raising them. And so he talked about 4 roles in there, and it was you know, priest, prophet, protector, provider. Yeah. Right? Those are 4 roles that a young man or any man needs to understand for himself as you know, as a father. Yeah. As a husband and father. So the notion of priest in that family is, you know, so the priest goes before God on behalf of the family. Right. So that notion, you know, you think of Job. What did Job do? Job went before God. You know, my children may have sinned, Lord, so I'm making the sacrifice on their behalf. Right. You know, so accept my sacrifice on their behalf is really, you know, what Job did. You think about David when, you know, when he knew that his son was going to die. Yeah. The baby was going to die. Yeah. It was intense intercession that David provided in prayer until the Lord took the child away, and he was like, you know, okay, well, the Lord did what he's going to do, right, but that didn't stop me from praying. Right. You know, so that notion of going on behalf of my family to the Lord, I'm on my knees, I'm praying for their needs. I'm the one who's leading that, because that's what my role is, to do that on behalf of my family intentionally, whether they know it or not. But they should know that I'm praying for them. I should be asking my kids, what's going on in your life that I need to be praying for? And you know, I'm checking up on what those prayer requests are, because I'm interceding for them, you know, to the Lord. Yeah,
that's awesome. You know, it's that, and this is why I like doing this, right? And we're not here just for y'all. I mean, I get a lot out of this, and I could just in my home, right? In my early days, like when I first got saved, I was still learning, like I learned it all, right? And my wife would always be the one to say, hey, let's pray together, right? And I didn't have a problem with it, but then discipleship happened. And it was like, oh no, that's my role. And again, a lot of us, we might not think about it. We probably not thinking about it. And it doesn't mean you a bad father, nope, right? But it's just some things that we need to stand up and lead, right? So now when we have prayer, I do the prayer. Now I also, in training up my kids, I'll every now and again I say, son, no, you're gonna do prayer tonight. My little daughter, you're gonna do prayer tonight. Like, so they can learn to pray, right? So I do that, right? But I understood now that when we do pray, I am to do that. And another thing I don't do, I tend to sometimes, I'll go to sleep and don't pray with the family, right? And my wife holds me accountable for stuff like that too, right? So, and it's like, okay, let me get my thing together and start doing that. And that's something I'm actively looking at and trying to do. But every now and again, it just doesn't happen. But it's something that, for me personally, and that's like I said, it ain't trying to put nobody nowhere. We all continue to learn and have to do these things. And this is what we're talking about, not just being a good father, but a godly father. Right. These are the things we have to do.
And I'm glad you said that, and you know, we're transparent about you know, growth in that area and your wife, because definitely my wife holds me accountable. My wife, you know, if you don't have a Dion Mitchell, you need to get one, because they're great things to have. You know, my wife is just fantastic, and you know, there are definitely times when I'm falling down, and she's like, "Nope, family's not going that way. Get up, boy. You know, get yourself together, and do what you're supposed to be doing." And she's right every time she does that, because this is my role. She's like, I'll do it if I have to, but it's not what my job is. This is your job.
Right.
You know it is.
Absolutely.
So let's get it together. Not that I'm going to be perfect at it, and I'm going to slip, I'm going to fall, and that's where, like I said, that relationship is really important. But that's also where some friend relationships are really important, where you have some other men saying, you know, what's going on? Are you, you know? So if we see this out of whack in your life, is it because this isn't happening?
Yeah.
So if you're just falling all over the place, what does this prayer life look like? So, you know, and this is an indication of your family's health as well.
Yeah, yeah. And as always, I always like giving a shout out to our women. It's a bonus, it's a plus when you got a godly wife, a godly mother there to make sure that you staying up too, right? So that's just something that you would look for.
And you know, so with that, I've been thinking a lot about this as in preparation, because there are you know, single dads out there. There are fathers that are not with the mother of their children, and so that piece might be strained, and you don't have that relationship, that accountability relationship. You don't have that type of you know, God completed support that was intended from the beginning, right? You know, so you don't necessarily have two people who are walking together to accomplish this task. That doesn't let you off the hook, though.
Right.
That's the whole thing. You have to you still have to carry out these tasks. God designed it so that you would have that relationship, so that you would have that you know, that completion. But if you are a single father, you have the exact same responsibilities, because God still gave you those children. So with or without that mate who is completing you and complimenting you in that way, you still have to think about how am I going to do these things. And then your accountability, you may have to be even more intentional about that accountability. You are submitted to God. You have to be more open and sensitive to what the Holy Spirit is saying, because he doesn't stop talking to you. He doesn't stop saying, hey, you know, you need to get up and do this. We become a little more desensitized to it, dull. You know, we get tired, we get worn out. We don't want to hear and listen. But God never stops prodding us through Him speaking to us through His Word. If we're coming to church, through the, you know, the preached Word, it's always around us. And the need never changes. So that need to be an intercessor is always there.
And let me, like I like to do with a lot of people that I interview here. We will go back a second with you, because I grab things. The single man, right? Let's just say that he is a godly man, but the mother is not. So when the child or children are with you, it's one way, but when he's with his mother, it's another way. And it becomes more of a fight, more difficult to bring that understanding to the child. How do you combat that? You know, not that I'm in that position. I know I ask questions, but I really want for the brothers out there that have that. How do you, you know, when he leaves, he know he ain't got to be held accountable for nothing. You know, how do you bring him back? How do you keep it, or at least strengthen him for when he goes back?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is a
or she.
She.
He or she.
No. I mean, when you are in these circumstances, and man, I'm thinking now, I probably caught a lot of great lessons from the youth retreat when I was an adult.
How about
worker at the youth retreat, because you know, this is going back years ago. I remember one of the youth retreat speakers was talking about, you know, what happens when you have a child out of wedlock. And the fact is that, you know, you become linked to somebody that you had no intentions of being linked to for the rest of your life. And that child between you becomes that link that gives them access to you, even when you don't want them to have access to you. And if you are a godly man, then you're making yourself open and available for the sake of the child. You know, in order to have that link and that access. One, your principles don't change. I mean, that's what if you're a godly man, your godly principles don't change. You know, that notion of being in prayer, you're in prayer once again really intentionally, because you know what the child is in, you know the circumstance, so you have to start there. You have to start by being deep in prayer, and then in the Word around for wisdom around what you're going to do and how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You have to have a standard that you're always imparting to that child in love. Not saying that this is what we do in my house, I don't care what you do at your mother's house.
Yeah.
This is what you should do because I'm leading you to the Lord. I'm trying to disciple you. And in leading you and in discipling you, this is for your life, not just for this temporary circumstance where you are right now.
Yeah.
I want the best for you. I want you to know the Lord, to live for the Lord yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the standard that we're trying to always guide our children toward.
Yeah.
And that as we're guiding our children toward those standards, it's not setting them up against the other parent. It is helping them to see that, if they're a Christian and they say that, they want to follow Jesus, well, then they have to be an example to that other parent as well.
Yeah.
I know that there are circumstances where someone in a single parent household, that the other parent may just be contrary and do things just to, get under your skin. But for the most part, you would tend to say that other parent wants the best for the child as well. The child wants to live a life of integrity upright before the Lord.
Yeah.
They're not going to fight against that. They may fight against you, but they're not going to fight against what's in the best interest of the child. So you have to keep that in front of them and have reasonable adult conversations outside of the child's purview.
Yeah.
This is when you have to keep those lines of communication open.
Getting on the same.
Here's what I'm doing. And I'm doing it because, you and I didn't work out.
Right.
Doesn't mean that this child has to suffer because you and I didn't work out. Here's what I want to do. I'm not trying to do anything to hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do something that's going to, encourage the child's life. And that's your also opportunity we saw on the commercial or on the little skit for evangelism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're praying for that parent as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're praying that the Lord would touch their heart.
Yeah.
And as the Lord touches their heart, that they would come to know who Jesus is.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I just had to get your take. I knew you was going to have something good there. So let's talk about being a protector. Now, I don't know if it says it up there, but I already know that when we talk about being a protector, it's not standing at the front door only like, you come in here, it's going to be, we ain't talking just that, right?
Not talking about being a Second Amendment protector.
A Second Amendment, right? Because when we ask or when we talk to men about protecting their family, that's the first thing we go to.
Right.
Hands, no, it's a little more than that, right?
It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, let's talk.
And once again, you need to get yourself a Dion Mitchell. Because my wife, she ministered to me in this very early on. And not that I came up with bad ideas, I just came up with ideas that, even though I grew up in the church, I just didn't have the most biblical ideas, and I didn't have the most refined ideas that we had to work through. And so that protecting is, you want to protect their hearts and minds.
Yeah.
That it's not just protecting them physically, because you do want to give them a safe environment. You want them to be, that they feel that their home is safe, that the relationship is safe, that they can come to you and talk, they can communicate their hurts and concerns and fears, and that you are, their dreams are secure with you.
Yeah.
Right? So that is part of protection, but it's also protecting their hearts and minds in what they're seeing, what they're watching, what they're spending time doing, who they're spending time with. That is all protection. My kids just can't be with anybody.
Right.
They can't just be over anyone's house. They just can't go and, sleep over. Nah. They're just things that we're just not doing without a lot of preparation, without some level of maturity, without relationships. So if there's another family and you're having a relationship with that child, then we've entered into a relationship with the family then.
Yeah.
We got to get to know the family at some level. Because now that family's an influence on you. And because that family's an influence on you, we need to ensure that influence is going to be productive and helpful and guiding you toward godly principles, and not something that every time you come from that house, we got to deconstruct everything, and it's like, well, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, shouldn't do the other thing. Why am I going to put my child in that circumstance where every time we got to do a whole debrief and cleanse after you come from someone's house, including family.
Debriefing and cleanse,
but including family. And unfortunately, I just we just can't turn our children over to anyone and expect them to carry out our principles.
Right.
And family can be some of the worst offenders, because family is like, well, I knew you, and you're not better than us. And if this is good enough, your child can watch that movie. I don't care what you said. Like, that's why they can't come over. And you got to be okay with that. You have to be okay with some of the controversy that's going to come out of that.
Saying no is protecting your children.
It is
too.
protecting the children.
Absolutely.
It is protecting their hearts and minds, so that as God is speaking to them, the conflict isn't there, because they know the principles they're being raised up under. They know what the biblical foundation is. And they have a good basis for, all right, this is why I can't do X, Y, and Z. It's not just because my parents are hard and don't want me to have fun. It's because my parents are protecting me. And if you're around other families and you can kind of walk together on that, then the kids, like, they can get together and talk about their crazy parents together. But they're doing it in a way that, in a safe environment, having fun with whatever they're allowed to have fun with. I mean, people ask me about like PG-13 movies, and my whole thing, like with the movie ratings, is, well, if the world set that standard, I mean, the world already said that.
There you go.
I mean, why am I even going to violate what the world said is the standard for how old the child should be that watches this movie?
That's a good point.
Gave me some wisdom right there. So I'm going to follow that wisdom and say, all right, so that's content that you shouldn't be exposed to, so we're not going to go there at this point.
That's cool. Look, I like that you said, and when you started, that you had ideas, but not biblical ideas. And I agree with that, because for me, I was the iron fist dude. It was my house, you gonna do, and and again, plugging discipleship, fruits of the Spirit. It wasn't until then that I learned what compassion was. Right? And if you're not showing that, building trust, and that love that you're supposed to have for your children, they're not going to share with you, right? So then it makes it harder to protect them. Like for me, one of my things, I can tell you, I try to eliminate privacy. I want to know what's going on. I'm shutting your doors. My daughter's door, I knock on.
When you say that, man, I cringe. I mean, and we struggle with this too as the kids get older, because what technology has done has made it even more and more difficult. And so that intentionality is that we have to think about where all these things are. But that you have accounts and passwords and all these things that I don't know about. We're not going to do that, because then one, you may be going into places where you shouldn't. Right. And you have so much access, and that means also the people have access to you, and therefore that whole notion of being able to protect just isn't there anymore.
That's true.
And so, this is, man. Like I said, I praise God for my wife, her wisdom, the wisdom of her friends, because my wife and her friends probably spend a lot more time thinking about and talking about these things as the mothers than we do as the fathers. I know that they talk more about it than we do, than me and my friends, and so we get those lessons, we get those things, and wisdom from a man's standpoint as well. I'm not going to fight against the wisdom that God has given my wife. I'm not going to just say, well, I want to do it this way, because I could want to do something that's really just stupid. And in my stupidity, and my my arrogance and my stupidity, I'm going to do something that could be harmful just to prove my point that I'm a man and this is my family and it's going to be this way. Because that means I'm not listening to God at all. I'm not listening to nobody.
You just said something deep there with that one. That one was deep there. But I can tell you, I got grown kids, and when I come home, everybody,
That's right.
Everybody's here. I'm grabbing. What you watching on TikTok? I want to know. What you watching? I do it. It don't matter that y'all grown. I don't care. I want to know what you're watching. And I'm happy to say my son, seems like he's aspiring to be some kind of cook or chef. He's a food guy. He loves looking at the food and pets. Cool. Now he's a grown man. Ain't much I can really say to him, right? I did what I needed to do to 18. Now he's grown. I gotta hope that a lot of the things being instilled in him, he's remembering, he's taking in. So it was good to see that he ain't what they could be watching.
Correct.
And same thing for my daughter. So happy to know that. But at the same time, still, my point is that I'm trying to eliminate privacy. I'm trying to protect. I know you're gonna do what you do. I'm not around you 24 hours a day, but I try to at least remind you of certain things.
But you just said something that was really important because you said, he's 18, he's grown, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, you're 24 now.
But even 24,
Yeah.
right? You're still a parent.
Absolutely.
And so even though your role shifts and changes, and it should, the role should mature, it's hard for us to sometimes mature those roles. There's no switch that gets flipped and we say, okay, now we're going to parent this way because of this age. So we have to grow into that change in the roles and relationships. But there still is an accountability. There still is, hey, at 24, I still want you to be healthy. I still want you to be able to come to me with concerns.
Yes.
As a 24-year-old young man, I don't know what you're watching, and what you're watching could be harmful and detrimental. Or the fact that you're on the thing all the time could be harmful and detrimental.
In itself,
within itself. So you always want to keep the lines of communication open because even as the roles change, that doesn't change the fact that you are a parent who wants the best for your child, and that God has given you something specific for you as a parent for that child that you continue to impart. My father died, it's been, 4 years now, 5 years? Man, I should know, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish I could pick up the phone, call my father and either tell him something or ask him something. And when times are tough and I don't have my father to ask questions, that's hard. That is really, really hard because I've depended on him for 50 years. Even when we didn't have even when we had some rough spots in our relationship, God brought me back because I was like, I can't do this without my dad. As angry as I may be at my father right now, I need to humble myself, submit, apologize, because I can't do life without him while we're here together, because he raised me, he's been there, he's given me that godly wisdom and advice. He's just been there for me, even if he didn't say anything, just so I can get it off my, needed some clarity. I needed to talk this through with someone who wasn't going to judge me and, who had my best interest in heart. And that's the role that he always played.
That's all.
When I was young, I did stupid things. He told me I did, that was stupid. So let's not do that again.
That wasn't the smart thing. And listen, this here specifically, I could talk about that for hours. And because exactly how you're explaining your father, I think we all want our sons to see us that way. And
daughters.
Yes, and daughters. Yes, and daughters. And again, I know this show is time, so I'm gonna let it go, because we're gonna move on to the next thing, right? And that's being a provider. And when we talk about being a provider, again, it's not always because your pockets is fat.
Right.
There's a lot more that you should be instilling in your children.
Right. Yeah. We often equate being a provider with just stuff. I work hard so my children will have. Right. Which is important for you to work so that your family is sheltered and fed and all those things. But it's not about status. Right. Being that provider means that you're actually instilling something in them about what God has called us to do, and that is that we are to be stewards. And so God has called us to stewardship, and that stewardship that he called Adam to right from the very beginning. You're going to work and you're going to take care of what I told you to take care of, because that's the principle I want you to follow. And then later on, like, but if a man doesn't work, he's worse, and he doesn't provide for his family, well, he's worse than an unbeliever. So you can't you can't be a burden on everyone and demonstrate that to your children.
And be a leader.
And be a leader. Really, really difficult to match those things up. So that notion of being a provider is that I'm providing for the needs of my family through following God's principles, what God has called me to do, and how he showed me to pass that principle down to my children. It doesn't mean that we're going to live in the house that is going to be on TV and we're going to have the cars and all those other things. If those things come from it, that's beautiful. But that's not the principle that we're supposed to be following.
And you see, and that piece that's there on the screen says that unhealthy expectations. And again, going back to the TikToks and the YouTubers of the world, things happen for them, and your children think, oh, it's supposed to happen for me too.
Correct.
I don't have to work hard these days. I can just, if I put the right video up, I'll be a star tomorrow.
I'll be a TikTok star.
Right. And
That's
it's
which is a
like,
category now, which is crazy. You know?
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the people
What are you
making-
famous for? I'm famous for being famous. I'm famous for likes.
Listen, I had 20 million likes and I made it.
That's right.
And it's just not like that. That's not.
Well, see, the whole thing, it is like that, but at the same time it isn't, because this is the economy that's coming up. This is how we socialize. We can't get rid of these devices. We can't get rid of the technology.
True.
So the technology is, you know, used for whatever it's used for. It is a reflection of where we are in society.
Yeah.
But it can't be the only aspiration.
That can't, right. You can't just expect it. What I'm saying is you just can't, because it's happened for a few, that you're next.
Yeah, but the being a TikTok star or whatever is the new, I'm going to be in the NBA.
Yeah.
It is the
that's a
new
good point.
whatever. It's the easy aspiration that we see an end goal that, even for these guys these people who are, you know, TikTok or whatever else, we don't see the hours that a lot of these people put into the content that they're putting on before they actually get that, you know, get whatever it is.
True.
They are actually investing in their craft in order to get to that spot.
Yeah.
There's no one, there are very few people who go viral, you know, just because they got something that caught fire and that was it.
Yeah.
And there was something that went into their production. There was something, I mean, even if I'm trying to write songs and self-produce, I've written a song.
Yeah.
I have self-produced. I've done these things in order to get this onto a platform.
Yeah, but,
so there's always going to be some work that's going to go in.
Yeah, and again, as a father, godly father, you're providing that information that, that you can't look at that as the expectation. You must still work hard.
You must
Just
work
like
hard.
what you're saying about those people that did all those things. You got to get to that place.
Yep.
You got to get to that place. Now, the last one, being a prophet in the family.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So, you know, so whereas the priest was going, you know, on behalf of the family before God, what the prophet is doing, the prophet is, you know, you're ministering to the family.
Yeah.
So you're saying, "Thus saith the Lord to my family." So you are leading devotions. You are getting them into the Word, getting them to you know, Bible school, Sunday school and church and all these other things. But you're helping the family see this is what God is saying for us.
Yeah.
You know, so that notion of love, loyalty, and respect, that was a way of prophetically saying that these are the biblical principles we're going to follow as a family.
Yeah.
Here's how we're taking what the Word is and making it come to life in our family.
Yeah.
You know, that when my kids are younger, you know, the whole notion of what discipleship is. Discipleship should start, you know, earlier than we often start discipleship. And so the purpose of home discipleship is that once you know your child has accepted Christ, how are you raising them up in Christ? How are you teaching them appropriately, age appropriately, for them to walk in their faith?
Yeah.
Are you reading the Word to them? Are you doing devotions with your child? Not perfectly, but are you doing it? Is it something that you have an intention of doing? Once again, my wife is much better and is, you know, much more on top of that than I am quite often.
Yeah.
When I'm on my game, not always on my game, but when I'm on my game, we're cooking on all, you know, we're cooking on all cylinders there.
Yeah.
But that should be my aim. That should be my goal.
Yeah.
That as the prophet in my family, that they know the Word because they see me in the Word, and I'm sharing the Word with my family, and I'm ensuring that my family has that type of exposure to the Word through all the means that they should.
Yeah.
Including and especially being part of a body of believers.
Yeah. And that's interesting what you said there, because for me, like when I'm in the Word, when I'm in my devotionals, I tend to look for a quiet place. So I'm not actually in front of them, right? And I don't know if that was the intent when you said that, like showing them, like seeing you doing that. That's something I think I want to do more. Like intentionally, I can intentionally walk in somebody's room and sit down and start doing my devotionals, right? I'm being serious, like, because again, the whole point of this, especially for me, is to continue to grow in that area. Because I got a lot ahead of me. And I check in. Did you pray? Are you praying? Are you talking to God? Are you reading the Bible? Which I know that they don't do enough of, right? But I'm not making them do it. right? And possibly, as we said, how our roles change as a father, that, you know, you got grown children now, it's not really much of making somebody do anything. I get it, but as you said, being accountable, you can still say things. You can still do this. There's a thing that we have here in the church with the brothers. You know, we'll get, you know, every morning somebody will send something nice. And when I get something and it's on point, I send it to all my kids to read. And then I say, did you read? You know, I ask those questions, because I know you're not in your Bible, so I'm sending you something to read. And you 2-minute read, something so it's hitting them in some way, shape, or form. That's what I am doing, because they're grown now. But I'm trying to at least continue to instill some part of that, because I know they're not actively doing it, right? And again, this is out there to say, well, here's a better way for you to do that.
Yep.
You know, as a father with grown kids, here's how you can do these things, right? So this is me just still poking at you, and hopefully others are listening in as well to say, man, I need to start doing a little bit something if you're doing nothing.
And, you know, I appreciate the fact that you said that you're still growing, you're still trying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As middle-aged men, which is who we are. You know, look at the gray, look at the gray. Well,
second quarter,
can't look at it here. Right, second half dudes. You know, it's important that we always see ourselves as growing and becoming, not that we've arrived.
Right.
You know, that we still have lessons to learn, and those lessons that we have to learn are because God still has us on this side of the dirt.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we're on top of the dirt, God still has some lessons for us to learn about how to improve, how to do what we're doing better. If we've messed up, there's some humility that we need to take on and say, okay, let's go to those we've offended, including our family, including our kids, say, hey, I didn't do this right. I want to set the record straight. I want to try something different and try something new. And please don't try your best not to hold my past against me as I'm trying to do things better. I want to follow what God has called me to. I want to do what the Lord is leading me in. And in doing so, I want to be a blessing to my family, because if I'm a blessing to you, then that generational blessing starts to get passed down. I mean, I have incredible confidence of the work that God has done in me, and that the work that God is doing in my children, that is going to be, be passed down in multiple generations, because it came from somewhere in me, right? So, it's the shoulders I'm standing on in faith in my family that have allowed me to be here, and I've passed on to them, that we've passed on to them, and we see that as they're forming families, forming relationships, that these are the areas of primacy for them, that they want to be in biblical relationships that are going to produce biblical families with biblical results and outcomes for the kingdom, that we're growing the kingdom through the family.
And we're going to go to a break, but in what you're just saying there, it was said, and I'm sure it was said here in the church, we're only one generation away from not talking about God anymore. So it's very important that we continue to instill in our children so that they can do to their children, and so forth and so forth. That is absolutely important. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. I think, man, you've been talking for a good minute. I think when we come back, we might be closing out the show. We'll be right back. We'll take a quick break.
Good morning. My name is Tim Walker, and welcome to another short segment of CSC Black Insight. This morning's topic is the 4th of July lie and why African Americans should receive reparations. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Ladies and gentlemen, those were the famous words of the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, telling that to white citizens who were in attendance in Rochester, New York on July 5th, 1852. Frederick Douglass said that while you, as white citizens, can lavish in your independence from Great Britain, African American slaves are bound by chains and heavy straps to perform heavy labor in a land that is not theirs at the expense of your joyous and prosperous lifestyle of living. Simply put, Frederick Douglass was telling the white audience that this 4th of July is yours, not mine or my people. His comments then and now are still resonating with the Black American public. As a result, reparations should be the order and demand of this year and beyond until we acquire it. As a black man who happens to be in a foreign land that is not our own, I have several reasons why the demand for reparations should be granted. In 1860, over 3 billion dollars was the value placed on the physical bodies of enslaved black Americans used as free labor and production. In 1861, the value placed on cotton produced by enslaved blacks was $250 million. As a result, slavery enriched white slave owners and their descendants. Today, the average white family has roughly 10 times the amount of wealth compared to the average black family. White college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than black college graduates. Native Americans have received land and billions of dollars for being forcibly removed from their native lands. Japanese Americans received $1.5 billion, who served in concentration camps in the U.S. during World War II. Moreover, the U.S. via the Marshall Plan gave reparations to survivors of the Holocaust in the form of millions and gave $3.3 billion in foreign aid to Israel this year. In 1952, West Germany agreed to pay a $3.45 billion Holocaust survivors. President Abraham Lincoln proposed and signed into law that each black family should receive 40 acres and a mule. However, after President Lincoln was assassinated, President Andrew Johnson reversed Field Order 15, 40 acres and a mule ordinance, and returned the land back to former slave owners. In 1967, Dr. King stated in a speech to a black church congregation on how white people got their land and wealth. He stated how the government was giving millions of acres of land in the West and Midwest. They built land-grant colleges to teach whites how to farm and provided low-interest loans to increase white wealth. The government also gave millions of dollars in federal subsidies, not the farm as well. However, the U.S. government tells black men and women you must lift himself or herself from their own bootstraps. Dr. King further states that is the reality we are faced with. But he further stated, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. That check, ladies and gentlemen, he is referring to was a form of reparations that is rightfully ours. Unfortunately, he was never able to come to Washington because he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. According to the New York Times article dated May 20th, 2022, the U.S. Congress contributed $54 billion of foreign aid to the Ukraine. In my opinion, reparations should be dispersed in the following. 1, each black citizen who have descendants who were slaves should receive a stimulus check of $150,000. 2, African Americans should not have to pay federal taxes for 450 years due to slavery, Jim Crow laws, convict leasing, and currently the prison industrial complex system. And 3, there should be free tuition to trade schools or colleges both locally and nationally. 4, power should be given to black communities to elect staff in public schools that their children's best interests in relation to schools, success in schools. 5, there should be fair and affordable housing in both the suburban and urban areas of our nation awarded to African Americans. How should we acquire reparations? Well, heavy pressure in large numbers from the African American community should demand their local and state political legislators to pass reparations that would grant us our economic freedom. Remember, Frederick Douglass stated that power concedes nothing without a demand. Conscious black, white, and other races of Christian, Muslim, and Jewish people in the United States should demand the local and federal government that reparations should be granted to African American citizens of this nation. If you are truly a conscious and religious person that you say you are, you should look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the question, what would Jesus do? I think you would know the answer to that question. Remember, real truth, not fear, is the embodiment of courage. The view and comments related to this segment is not the view and comments from Christian Stronghold Church or the Men's Breakfast Program. They are simply the views and comments of my own. Have a blessed day and an even better one tomorrow.
Welcome back, brothers. We back? Welcome back, brothers. We're back for our last segment. What we're going to do before we close out, we're going to talk about what we were looking at. It done dropped it. Preparing your children for a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Man, when I first heard that, I was like, oh man, yeah, let's delve into that one there, right? So just give me what you're thinking about that. What is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, you know, when we think about any adult role, adults are, as we continue to work with young people, we have a history where we've seen everything that's come in our lifetimes, and so we have this predictive factor, like, well, here's how some things might start to change up, right? Here's some things that may show up in the world that we've never, you know, been part of, and so, like, you know, I work in public education, and schools are kind of notorious for training kids for a world that has already passed them by.
Oh yeah,
right?
How about that?
As fathers, part of our role is to have a vision for our children as well.
Right.
We're to know them.
Yeah.
And in knowing them, we know the gifts that God has placed in them, the strengths, and their weaknesses, right?
Right.
So that our preparation for them is for here and now, but it's also for their future.
Yeah.
And that notion of preparing them for a world that doesn't exist is not just about information, it's about how they're built.
Yeah.
How we've strengthened them, you know, how the type of backbone we've given them, and ultimately the type of relationship we've given them with the Lord, so that as they're entering into new circumstances that we couldn't foresee, technologies and jobs and all these other things that we, you know, I mean, so we were just talking about being a TikTok star.
Yeah.
There was no TikTok a few years ago for you to be a TikTok star, right? So there are things that we can't even imagine, but our children have to be prepared to get into and face those things. So in order to do that, that model that I talked about a little while ago, looking at David and Solomon, you know, so David, in Chronicles, David took care to talk to Solomon. And in talking to him, he's like, all right, look, I've done all these things, you know, but you're going to do some different things.
Right.
And in order for you to do those different things, there's some things I need to do in order to prepare that way for you.
Right.
Right. And in preparing that way for you, so there's some provision I have to make for you.
Right.
Right. So when we think about the providing for our children, we may not necessarily always have the physical resources that we're going to leave them, you know, I'm going to give you this cash to start this business. Right. But can I ensure that your education is strong?
Yeah. Yes,
and can I make sure that you have a standard of, you know, excellence? Excellence doesn't mean you have to bring all A's. Excellence means you have to do your best.
Right.
You know, and if your best doesn't translate into that grade, but we can have a conversation, we know that you've done your best, then we're on solid footing there.
Yeah.
So that provision, that I need to make for them. I need to make sure that my world is connected to your world. You know, my influences become your influences. The people who have been my advisors and the people who have looked out for me, they're going to look out for you too.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be able to ride on who I am in my name for a minute.
Yeah.
You should be able to. So that means there has to be something about me that people would look at me and be willing to invest in you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not from Philly. I'm looking at this hat. I'm from Pittsburgh, the other side of the state. 6 rings, but you know that's a whole nother story.
We got one.
You got one. You got one. You got one. Hey, you got that one. Yay.
Better than your 6. We don't get it.
But you know, so my father, my dad was a man of influence, right?
Yeah.
And I knew if I was still in Pittsburgh, I would have that whole
network,
right? You know, and my father, I was 19, 20 years old, and my father, when I would come home on breaks from college, my father started taking me to meetings with him.
Oh.
Right? It was the most overwhelming thing to me to sit at a meeting with him and his friends, him and his associates, who were planning big things, you know, in the region, in the city. And then they would turn to me and ask me, what did I think? I'm like, I think you need to have somebody who knows what they're talking about. But they gave me that space.
That's preparation.
It was huge preparation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what they was like, look, I'm giving this to you.
Yeah.
I'm giving this to you, right? I want you to be connected to the people who love me and have watched out for me, so they love and watch out for you too.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fantastic. Yeah.
But most importantly, it was like, look, you got to follow in my ways. You got to love God.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be submitted, and you got to be hearing from God. You know, so that notion of I have a different role than you. So God called me to be a warrior. God called you to be a diplomat. God called you to wisdom. But you got to, you know, so when God asks you what you want, it has to be who you are. You can't say, well, I want you to give me what you gave my father.
Right.
Because what you gave my father isn't for me.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
You know, what you're going to give to me is what I need in order to carry out the task that you've given me. But as a father, we have to help our children walk in that and understand that. And to say that, no, you don't have to live in my shadow, you know, you can ride on my coattails. There's a big difference in that.
Yeah.
And the examples that I'm showing you, how I'm training you up, it's so that you have the muscles, you have the endurance. You know, this is a workout, right? And so that you have all that you need in order to step into the role that God has for you. But let's talk about what that role is, and you know, look at all those things, look at those characteristics. You're not just out there swinging in the wind. You know, we've actually sat down over and over again and talked about where God is taking you. You know, so 6 sons. You know, and for each one, you know, we really have prayed and talked to them about, you know, where is it that God has strengthened them, where has God called them. I always laugh about my oldest son, because when he was ready to make a college selection or to start looking at schools, people would ask him, so, you know, what are you going to study in school? And he'd say, well, I'm either going to study engineering or music. I was like, whoa, hold up, kid. Let's go back and take a look at what you're saying. All right, so yeah, we can see the engineering because we can see the track record, we can see, you know, the interest and all these other things. And you like music. It's cool that you like music. Yeah. Nobody's recruiting you for music. Nobody is saying, come to my school to play. Right. That's something you can continue to grow in and do. Right. But should it be what you actually go to school for, just because you like it? Right. You know, as a goal. As a goal. Yeah. So let's weigh those things out. And if you feel that God is calling you to that, I'll submit. Right. But I don't think that's where God is calling you. Because I don't have the evidence in front of me to say that. God often gives us, you know, those Gideon moments. He's going to put that you know, that lamb's wool on the ground, and it's either going to be dry or wet, right? So you know, God has given that to us. He's making things really, really clear. Yeah. So it's not just like, I'm going to be wishy-washy about this. Like, no, you have all the evidence here. This is what you like. This is what where your strengths are. Yeah. Here's where you should, you know, probably put your energies and follow. Yeah. But so many parents are like, well, I'm going to let them do what they want to do. It's like, well, that's cool to a certain level, except chances are they may not know what they want to do. So they need to kind of be undecided for a little while before they cast their lot in a particular direction that may be the wrong direction, which becomes a waste of resources, time, and increases frustration. And then chances are they're not going to finish in that thing because we haven't taken the time beforehand to find out, to talk, to pray, and to prepare based on where God is showing you.
That's another key thing right there. I am consciously putting in that effort to ask God first. Yeah. In everything, though.
Everything.
And we say that, we don't really think about it, but really, in everything. When you have to make a decision, that's where you should go. You know, earlier, what you were saying about your father and taking you to meetings and things, I kind of equated that to, like, my father used to have me around with him when I was younger. And his network and all this, they knew me on Irish son, little Irish, what they used to call me, Irish. And he, you know, a lot of those guys, simply because of who my father was, looked out for me. Right. And to see, and I like that you said that your child, your son or daughter, to be connected to your world, right, in the way that you broke it down. And for some of us, like me, you know, I grew up 46th Street, a lot of people 46th and Market, that's where I grew up at. So my network is not particularly where I want to place my son so he can learn from them. But again, that's why it's important to find church, to find a church, a good church such as Christian Stronghold, because there are men here where now I'm able to do that. And I'm very appreciative that when my son shows up, the brothers here have conversations with him, talk to him, and he's getting into my circle that way.
That's right.
So it is key to, and there's so many people in the church that do so many different things that can help you in so many different ways, right?
When you talk about the ministry here and that notion, I mean, I look at the young doorman. You know, so you got these brothers, young guys, who are part of the ministry. They're not junior doormen.
Right.
They're part of the ministry. They take the responsibility seriously. As I moved from discipleship in my house to youth discipleship,
Yeah.
I knew that there was a pathway that I could start turning my children over to for to be a continued support in raising them.
Yeah.
And it was godly men and godly women who were going to continue to pour their lives into them, and that started a shift in the relationship, the shift that should occur.
Yeah.
And it also started them building relationships that were more mature relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now, as my children are older, I mean, I don't hesitate because so my social media, our social media, like LinkedIn, right? So
Right. All right. Yeah. All right. So yeah.
our social media,
Yeah.
but that's a professional network,
Yes.
right?
Right.
I don't hesitate connecting my children in my professional network to other professionals.
Yeah.
People who, if Art connected me to the child, I'm going to make this connection because it's not just because he's trying to get his kid, elevated some way.
Yeah,
but there's some mutual benefit here that child is someone who at this point, or that young man is someone who I might be able to benefit from
Right.
in the work that I do as well. So
Right.
not only can I support that young person,
Yeah.
but I can use that young person because they're an asset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to raise assets. I don't want to raise burdens.
Yeah, right.
I want to raise, contributing. People are going to
Raise
contribute to the world, contribute to the kingdom. I want to raise people, young people who are not going to be a drag.
Right. Right.
That's part of the intentionality. That, so one of the things that in my professional world that we talk about is the economic contributions of and the work productivity contributions of black folks, right? And to a certain degree, we're not even put into the equations. If we participate, it's a bonus.
Right.
It's not actually built into the structures. So I want to raise young people, and I want us to raise generations of young people who people are seeking and coming after because they're like, okay, we know that they're going to be a benefit to our system.
Yeah.
So we want to plan
Yeah.
for them
Set
coming
them
into
up.
our system
Yeah.
instead of if they actually show up in the system, then we're just happy that they showed up.
Right. Right.
No, it shouldn't just be that they're happy that they showed up by happenstance.
Making it intentional.
Making it intentional.
Yes.
And there are intentional pathways all the way through, and the church is primary to those intentional pathways.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can go on and on about church and specifically Christian Stronghold. So I get that, and that's why I try so hard. I'm trying to get all of my children in here. You can so many contacts, so many people, so many things that you can learn from others to continue to grow. Because I tell my son all the time, like, I used to say, because I'm realizing there's a way to talk, right? I used to say, you can't talk to your father. Who can you talk to? Well, clearly there's other people that you can talk to.
Yes.
Dad is not always the best one to talk to, right? So I look forward to them being able to move out and be able to network. And now what you just said, making them part of my network, which I think, man, where was I think, why didn't I consider that, right? It's something I think just naturally happens, but you gotta be intentional with what you're doing with your kids.
You have to be.
Yeah.
You have to be. And there are so many blessings. There are blessings in watching it happen, seeing the fruit of your labor.
Yes, yes.
And what it does, it builds your confidence in the Lord, because like, Lord,
Yes.
I was faithful to what you told me to do.
Yeah.
And I get to see the fruit. I get to see the reward of my labor. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not a one-to-one.
Yeah.
It's not like if I do this and God's going to do this. God's not a genie in a bottle.
Yeah.
But God's principles, God's precepts, we're following them. Like I said, and we do have Jesus to follow. We have the Lord to follow, the Holy Spirit ministering to us. But He's given us His word as like, here are all the pieces you need to do. Do those things and don't do those things, right? Really, do this, don't do that.
Yes, yes.
See what I do.
Yes, and in doing this, earlier we were talking about characteristics of a godly father, and we covered a whole lot, but this is why it's important that you as a man lead your family, love your family, provide for your family, right? And again, we got to remember the spiritual things, not just those physical things that we tend to think that we must give to our kids, right? It's very important to remember all of that. Now, I know we kind of crushed this episode, right? We went through a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to drag it more further, but I know that I can't do that, right? You got brothers here, brothers got to get back to their families as well, and I'm sure a lot of people like, yeah, hurry up so I can apply a lot of what I just heard before I forget it, because I learned that as well. You know, you don't apply what you learn, you lose it, right? So let's take that and get in it. I can tell you now that later on I'm gonna probably be watching this again. You know what I mean? So I just want to.
I need to remember what I said.
So again, this has been awesome, man. And I appreciate you coming on the show, taking the time.
I appreciate being here.
I gotta let you go. We're gonna go ahead and close out. We're gonna have a closing prayer, and we're also gonna have music ministry. We're gonna have my brother Dave. Oh, that's a shame. My brother Dave, he's gonna be singing for us.
Amen.
So we're gonna go ahead and close out with that. Thank you guys for checking us. We hope to see you guys next month. Take care.
Praise the Lord, everybody.
That was awesome, bro.
I said, praise the Lord, everybody.
David.
If you just stand, God will stand in. When you've done all you can, seems like it's never enough. What do you say when your friends have turned away and you're all alone? What do you give when you're giving your all? Seem like you can't make it through. Will you just stand when there's nothing left to do? Will you just stand and watch the Lord see you through? After you've done all you can, will you just stand? Tell me, how do you handle the guilt of your past? Tell me, how do you deal with the shame? And how can you smile when your heart has been broken and filled with pain, filled with pain? Tell me, what do you give when you're giving your all and it seems like you can't make it through? Will you just stand when there's nothing left to do? Will you just stand and watch the Lord see you through? After you've done all you can, will you just stand and be sure? Be not entangled in bondage again. Will you just stand and endure? God has a purpose. Yes, God has a plan. Tell me, when you've done all you can, seem like you can't make it through, will you just stand? Will you stand? Will you stand? Don't you dare give up. Hold on. Be strong. God will stand in, and it won't be long. Don't you bow. Don't you bend. God will stand up, and He will stand in. Don't give up. Don't give up. God will stand in, and it won't be long. After you've done all you can. After you've done all you can. You've been wounded, you've been scarred. Sometime you cried all night long. After you've gone through the hurt. Oh, after you cried all night long. After you've done all you can. After you've gone through the storm. After you've done all you can. You just stand. Oh, 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 yeah.